Hello, my lovely bunnies. Whee! Okay, so this video is about spiritual ignorance and spiritual bypassing. Um, so, basically, most people are either spiritually ignorant or spiritually bypassing. Both of which will not allow you to resolve your childhood traumas and your inner child traumas. Inner child traumas are usually from childhood, but don't have to be, because your inner child is always with you, and it's the vulnerable part of you. But what I've found is a lot of people with inner child trauma have difficulty with sending love to their inner child, because if they were not loved as a child, then they don't even know what love is. And so those people often end up doing different things to feel good, such as reading the Bible, praying to God, doing yoga, meditation, drugs, blah, blah, blah. To feel some kind of right brain connection, if you want to look at it that way, but like some type of release, let's say, divine release from their traumas. And so this works, but it's not healing the inner child. It's just allowing the adult version of you to basically ignore your inner child. Because it's like, imagine as an adult, right? Your suffering is caused by the cries of your inner child. You're listening to this inner child crying all the time, and it's painful. And so you do yoga, meditation, praying, drugs, and all these things, and what you're really doing at this point is you're putting earplugs in so you can't hear the cries of your inner child, and suddenly you feel so much relief. And that's great. But the problem now is that although you have some wealth, some spiritual wealth or something that you could transfer to your inner child, you could use this nice, happy feeling to send it to heal your inner child. But instead, what people usually do is they just use this nice feeling to ignore their inner child. So it's kind of like, okay, so what is the consequence of this? So this is called spiritual bypassing. And the consequence of this is you become like a holier than thou type person. Kind of blows up your ego. And you could feel like you're God's favored one, you're chosen, you're enlightened, or something like this, when in reality what people are noticing about you is just that you're an asshole. So that is what happens when we take the abundance of the universe and we just bask in it instead of using it to feed our inner child. So yeah, it's like, imagine that your inner child is starving and he's screaming all the time like, oh, I'm so hungry, but you can't do anything for him because you're also starving. In other words, let's say I'm talking about food, but it's really love. But anyway, love is spiritual food. And so you can't give your inner child any food because you don't have any, and so you're also starving. And so both of you are starving and suffering. And then one day you get a feast somehow. You have a feast on the table, and you just gorge yourself while your inner child is still starving and watching you incredulously. And it almost compounds the pain of the inner child now, because he or she sees now that you actually could help him or her with what you now have, but instead you're ignoring him or her more than ever before. So this is why spirituality can be actually bad for you. It's not bad, it's actually good if used correctly, but this is why it can, and often, almost always, is bad. Because people are not using it correctly. Now, how does this line up with what Buddha taught? Well, I think Buddha didn't really have any, childhood trauma, so that's why he didn't need to think about this, and probably inner child trauma was not that prevalent back in his day, since we had a much more natural society. Well, it wasn't exactly natural, it wasn't tribal, but it was much less complex and messed up than our society is today. And in fact, he said that everybody loves themselves more than anyone else. So that tells you something, because these days, most people just hate themselves. So, and here's a little quick test to know if you love yourself. Can you say, whatever your name is, let's say my name is Joel, so I say, I love you, little Joel. Can you say that, and can you feel it? And doesn't it feel amazing? I tell people to try this a lot of times, and they're like, I'll try that later, maybe. So they failed that test. Okay. So there you go. Spiritual ignorance is not believing in any divine anything. There is no beauty to the universe beyond what I can experience with my five senses, and so if I don't have any release, I will never have it, because there's no grand anything beyond me that could provide it. So this is also very dangerous.